Last spring, Democrats proposed a bail reform measure in New York. The idea was to remove cash bail for nonviolent offenses. So if you were a poor person, committed an offense, or was accused of one, and you got arrested, they couldn't make you pay money in order to get out of jail. Now, on the surface, it makes a lot of sense. If you're innocent until proven guilty, how can we hold you in jail and charge money so you can leave, right? You could be in jail for a day or two and lose your job. So on the surface, again, it makes sense. But I do want to point out our system is that, well, if you're accused of a crime, we hold you for a short period of time. You go before a judge, and the judge will determine whether or not you should be remanded for that crime. Now, many Republicans were concerned. Bail reform would result in known criminals being let loose of their own recognizance, and they'll commit crimes again. They were concerned that as soon as this law went into effect, you would see crime spike. Well, that's actually happening. Whether or not it has anything to do with bail reform, I'm not sure, but it certainly seems to play into exactly what Republicans were saying. This story from the New York Post. It looks like New York's getting the crime uptick politicians have been asking for, noting that robbery and shootings are actually up around 30%. Now, hold on. Shootings are violent crimes. So, I mean, if you committed that, you're going to get remanded. They're not going to, if you're suspected of being a shooter, they're going to hold you. The challenge here is that I think it actually does make sense to do bail reform, but perhaps it just doesn't work in terms of practicality, in practice, right? Let's read this, though, and then I want to talk about innocent until proven guilty and whether or not what they're doing makes sense. The New York Post story says robbery is up almost 30% in New York City since the first of the year. Is this a statistical blip, a trend, or a New Year's bail reform gift from Albany? Robbery now largely being a revolving door offense in the Empire State. Time will tell, but consider this as well. According to the latest NYPD stats, the number of shooting victims in the city is up 31% since New Year's Day. So at the very least, Gotham appears to be off to a rocky 2020 compared to last year. I'll stop here and say this. Bail reform is for nonviolent offenses. Shootings are absolutely violent offenses. It could be that if someone is, say, a robber or a burglar or something like that, and they get arrested, and then they are released, the likelihood you see more shootings because they are people who intend to use violence but may not have will likely go up. So it actually does line up with releasing people who are committed of crimes without a cash bail. Let's read on. Let's read on. He says, which should not surprise. Not only does the government usually get more of what it encourages when it comes to crime, it also gets more of what it fails to discourage. Sad to say, New York falls down on both counts. Albany's bail reform initiative got off to an ominously comical start when the feds had to take custody of alleged serial bank robber Jared Woodbury because local judges had to keep turning him loose. Well, what else was there to do but laugh? But consider this. Robbery in the third degree became a revolving door offense January 1st, and this was followed by a dramatic 29% spike in reported robberies, according to the most recent, albeit very short-term, CompStat numbers. The crime isn't nearly as amusing as a haplessly compulsive bank heister. Robbery, third, involves the threat of physical force and was devastatingly common in the 80s. But its current threat to the city's streets is clear enough. Shootings, thank goodness, aren't yet revolving door offenses, but nevertheless also were up sharply, according to CompStat, with a 22% hike in incidents and that 31% increase in victims. A Thursday shootout in Upper Manhattan, 1 dead, 2 wounded, suggests the spike is no fluke. I'm going to stop here and make a point. If you arrest 10 people, 9 of whom are innocent and 1 of whom is actually guilty, before you can determine it, yes, crime will go down. This is the inherent challenge of bail reform. I personally do not believe we should have a system that requires cash before proving guilt. However, the way the system works today is that you are held for a short and reasonable period of time. It's getting jammed up. It's not perfect. And you go before a judge. The state will say, do we have probable cause that we believe this person committed this crime? And if the judge thinks the answer is yes, and you're dangerous, they could remand you and require cash bail. If, however, the state has no reasonable grounds, they probably wouldn't prosecute. For the most part, they don't need to prove it. They just need to say, here's why we think this person should be held. You can then state your case. So the point is, even before being, presumed innocent or guilty, you're supposed to be released of your own, recognizance or whatever the phrase is. They require cash bail to make sure that you come back. But poor people often can't afford it. Do we then remand people We don't know if they're innocent or guilty. Lock them up until they go to court. I think that's wrong. So here's what ends up happening. I don't like this argument one bit. We are seeing a crime spike. That's bad. It may be due to bail reform. So how do we solve this problem? I honestly don't know. But I still lean more towards it is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer. So if we do have cash bail, and we do have the system that requires poor people to put up cash they probably don't have, otherwise they get locked up for they say it's reasonable, but it could be weeks. Sometimes it could be months before you actually get to go to trial. Your job is over. You lost your apartment. So I'll tell you this. Crime is going up. That is absolutely correct. But at what cost? Honestly, we don't know. It could be that the Democrats are just letting the criminals go and they go and commit more crimes. It could be that when they lock up tons of innocent people, you tend to capture some of the guilty ones in that net, keeping crime down. I lean more towards liberty. I believe there must be a better solution than cash bail to these problems. And I honestly don't know what it is. But I really don't like the idea of locking people up and telling them they got to pay. Otherwise, they're going to stay in jail until they get a court date. What happens if you get arrested and they say, you know what? It's $1,000 if you want, to bail you out, and you don't have it. Say, okay, well, your court date's in a month, in 2 months. Okay, you've lost your job. You have no income. Where do you go after you get out? And then it turns out you were innocent. You go to trial and they say, oh, looks like he was telling the truth. Innocent person. Why should we destroy the lives of the innocent because guilty people exist? To reiterate, my concern here is that crime is going up because criminals are being let go. But how many criminals and how many people are being let go? If we're letting go 100 people and 10 of them are criminals, it is better that 10 guilty persons escape than 100 innocent suffer. Or even if it's inverted, if it's 9 out of 10 are criminals, it's better that one innocent person be let go than we lock them all up. The terrifying result of that is what people who believe in freedom have often understood. This means those criminals will be let go too. But it is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer. So I look at these crime numbers and I'm kind of worried. I really am. I believe in freedom. I do not want people to be in jail for even 1 second if they are innocent and not proven to be guilty. No, I get it. If you're at a scene of a crime and you're the suspect, they're going to arrest you to process you. It makes sense. There is reason, okay? There is a reasonable action to be taken by those who believe they have probable cause to do so. I do not believe the cops are overwhelmingly evil people just grabbing random people off the street. But sometimes they make mistakes and sometimes there are bad cops. So what? What happens if it's you? There was a story during Occupy Wall Street where when the protesters were marching down the street, the police took that they call it a kettling net. It's this orange net, and they wrap it around the protest group. Well, they wrapped it around the door of a convenience store, and some guy in a suit walks out with like an orange soda, and he was in the arrest net, and he was like, what's going on? Let me out. And the cop said, no. And the guy's like, I was just buying a soda at the store. He got arrested. He couldn't go. He was like on break from work. They arrest him. He goes to jail. They had no reason to suspect him of any wrongdoing. He was just walked out of a convenience store. So apparently it was big news because he was at court screaming about how the practice of mass arrests are illegal because there's no probable cause. That's a different issue. I understand. I think he was right. I don't know what happened. I think it got thrown out. But think about that. The cops literally arrested a ton of people without knowing who did what or why and didn't care. The same thing happened in Washington, D.C. The challenge here is that it's really easy to be in favor of liberty and freedom when you have a small population. You see one person and you say, I think he did it. And they say, hey, you can't arrest him because you just see this person here and you think he did it. You can bring him in for questioning. There's certain reasonable things we can do to try and stop crime. But when you get to this massive scale, you end up with a city of 10 million people. You end up with all of these arrests and the police can make mistakes. So you get this innocent guy who goes to jail, even just for overnight. They hold him. Now he's got to explain to work that he got arrested. You know what's really scary? Let's say you're walking down the street and a guy runs out of a liquor store with cash and you fit a general description and the cop sees you and he grabs you and is like, you're under arrest. And you're like, I didn't do anything. And they're like, shut up. You then get arrested. You miss work because you're in jail over the weekend. Just the weekend. You're not convicted of a crime. We're not even at the point of bail. Okay. You couldn't afford bail. They say you'll see a judge on Monday. You get out of jail. You go back to work on the Monday. You call as soon as you're like, I'm so sorry this happened. I got arrested. They're going to say, why did you get arrested? They accused me of robbing a liquor store. And they're going to, and guess what? Most people aren't going to believe you. Yep. because culturally we have this problem of not believing people are innocent. We presume guilt. If you got arrested, people will just assume you got arrested for a reason. Now you missed work for 2 days, no call, no show. You asked you couldn't reach a friend. It happens. Hey man, could you tell them I was arrested? They're going to be like, why? Whoa, what happened? And they're going to get mad and they're going to replace you. You did nothing wrong. You were innocent, but your life was harmed because of this. Look, I don't know what the solution to that is, because the cops didn't do it intentionally. They made a mistake, but they were trying to stop crime. I can respect that. It's better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent suffer. Herein lies the big problem. And I'll throw it to you because I don't know what the answer is. I seriously don't. Do you think anyone's going to cheer for the crime spiking? Absolutely not. And it may very well be because we are saying, if you are arrested, we're going to let you go. Don't worry about it. You just come back to court later. It's not fair that poor people have to pay money to get out. I think that's true. And this is the unintended consequence. But what's the alternative? Hold potentially innocent people under the presumption that some of them may be guilty? No way, man. I will never support that. It is the authoritarian dictators who say it is better that 10 innocent suffer than one guilty person escape. Look up Blackstone's formulation. This is a serious, serious challenge. How we reduce crime, but make sure the innocent aren't being punished or held, in unreasonable circumstances. I think it's absolutely unfair to require people to pay cash because sometimes people just don't have it. Not everybody's rich and not everybody can afford it. Herein lies the great conundrum of liberty. So you know what? Personally, I think it is better. I really do. That crime would go up, but we are less likely to detain the innocent. I really do. Now, as to how we prevent crime, perhaps the problem arises with New York's harsh regulations on self-defense, if you know what I mean. I don't know. I don't know what would happen, and it seems like we have to recognize that with liberty comes risk, right? The risk is that the freer we are, you also have bad people who are free as well. But I'd rather there be an uptick in crime than a bunch of innocent people being locked up. The presumption from people on the right, I believe, is that the people being arrested by the cops are always going to be the ones who committed the crime, but that's not true. When I was covering a protest back in 2011, I think it was, the police falsely arrested a photographer and lied about it. This guy was standing on the sidewalk taking pictures. He was actually pro-cop. He said that the media narrative was always anti-cop, so he wanted to film the cops doing their job correctly. They falsely arrested him and accused him of blocking the street. I filmed him. When I was streaming, I was doing a live stream, he was on the sidewalk when he got arrested. So they used that in court and got the charges dismissed. The female officer who arrested him didn't see him do anything. She was just told by her superior to arrest the guy. So she walked up and said, "Shut up, you're under arrest." Totally innocent. Should that guy have been locked up for, a month or two until his court case, finally came up if he couldn't afford it? Absolutely not. That happens. I would rather him and 9 other actual criminals be let go to guarantee the innocent don't suffer. That's Blackstone's formulation. That's recognizing that you now have criminals back on the street because it's the obligation of the government to prove beyond a reasonable doubt and look, it's beyond that. It's the government should have a very hard time to detain and strip someone's rights away, even for a short period. It should be very, very difficult. What does that mean? It means crime goes up. It does. It seems like it really does. That's bad. That sucks, man. I don't know the solution. I really don't. I believe in freedom, protecting the innocent until proven guilty. I think bail reform makes sense. Poor people should not be held simply because they're poor. How do we then deal with this problem? I honestly don't know. I don't. Perhaps we have to have more personal responsibility in defending oneself against criminals. Perhaps we need more police on patrol to, prevent. One of the big problems with police, and conservatives totally know this, is that, and that's why this is one of the Second Amendment arguments. They say when seconds matter, police will be there within minutes. That's a Second Amendment argument. So perhaps we need to be, you know what, man? I don't even know if this is a solution. If you get a bunch of people going around trying to claim they were acting in self-defense, you just really don't know. I think the reality is if we want to respect freedom, we err on the side of actually letting criminals go. That's literally what the presumption of innocence and Blackstone's formulation is supposed to be about. So herein lies the big challenge. Yeah, I can say crime is spiking in New York City, dangerous, violent ones, scary ones, shootings, and that's really bad. But authoritarianism isn't the answer. Allowing the police to just arrest people and lock them up and charge them money isn't the answer. And I honestly don't know what is. I think the immediate response from a lot of people on the right would probably be something like gun rights. Because if everyone was armed, you're less likely to see criminals trying to go around shooting people. But could that then result in criminals who are armed too and shootings going up, making it more dangerous for police? Man, I really, really don't know the answers. I really don't. It's nice to sit in our comfort, knowing that crime rates are going down. But it's scary to realize that you could be that guy in a suit buying a Fanta at a grocery store and walking out and being arrested for no reason, and they don't care and they lock you up. And then you got to go to work and explain how you got arrested. That's not cool either. So what do we want? Do we want to say it's better just to lock people up under the presumption they might be guilty? Or do we recognize that crime will go up if we release those who might be innocent, who might be guilty, but we're protecting the innocent? This is a big challenge. It really is. But I think the answer is simple. We always must err on the side of the presumption of innocence. And if we have to deal with an increase in crime, then we need to solve that after the fact. The presumption of innocence comes first and foremost. If crime is spiking, then you need to figure out what you can do to reduce that crime while not imprisoning the innocent, even for a short period, okay? Detaining. Man, this is a tough one, isn't it? This is a tough one. It's fair to say it's tough, right? I don't think I'm wrong. I think I can accurately point out protecting the innocent and not wanting crime. But I'll be damned. I mean, this is tough, isn't it? So I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. at youtube.com/Timcast. Stick around and I will see you then.